Hello, everyone. Welcome to OneSoccer.ca. Kaylin, you got to pay attention. We're ready to go.
I'm on Instagram.
Yeah. I already have a feeling we know how this show is going to go if that's the start. But you are watching OneSoccer.ca. Annie Petrillo alongside Kaylin Kyle, former international for Canada, Olympic bronze medalist. We have Amy Walsh, also former international with Canada, and is also a Canada Soccer Hall of Famer, still plying the trade here in soccer, doing some training with some teams as well, sideline with CF Montreal. Amy, really appreciate you taking the time. Can't wait to pick your brain here today. And of course, Laura Armstrong, writer extraordinaire with the Toronto Star. This show is dedicated to the women's game, and there is a ton of stuff to get to. One in particular is a new tournament. It's called the Arnold Clark Cup, and invitational. 4 teams by the FA. They're hosting it out in England. You have Germany competing, England, and you bet Canada got the invitation. This tournament begins February 17th, goes to the 23rd. We know the roster as well for the Canadian. Laura, I'll start with you. Take a look at this. I guess there's a lot of places we could go with this. First of all, it's another tournament for women's soccer. So what are you expecting from it and your reaction when you saw the Canadian roster?
I'm excited for this tournament. I think that these teams, this competition is going to be phenomenal. I'm excited to see what Bev Priestman has to do. She spoke with the media yesterday and she sort of said, yeah, it's great that we have a gold medal, but now we want to win a World Cup and win more gold medals and all that. So that's what sort of starts, I think, with this tournament. I mean, we saw the team play in Mexico, but there were roster constrictions and there was altitude and then there was a celebration tournament, but that was about fun. This is really sort of in earnest getting set. It'll be interesting to see how Canada fares. I mean, you have to remember that Germany, England, and Spain are in the middle of their qualifying campaign for the World Cup. So they're sort of at a different point in their cycle than the Canadian team. Bev Priestman said yesterday that is she expecting that team to go in and just blow everybody out of the water? Absolutely not. But, you know, we'll see how Canada fares. I think it'll be a good test, important for them to play against European opposition. In terms of the roster, a lot of familiar faces. We're going to miss Christine Sinclair, and we send our condolences out to the Sinclair family after Christine's mother passed away. Christine is a big advocate for multiple sclerosis research. So, you know, if anybody wants to donate for the Sinclair family, that's one way to go. And then there's also Adriana Leon. She's working her way back from injury. So other than that, a lot of familiar faces, some new faces, and I think that's huge for Bev Priestman, the fact that she's really trying to bring in new players and see who's going to be in that roster for qualification and then at the World Cup in 2023.
Kaylin, what do you make of another tournament happening as well that women can participate and compete in?
Can you see my smile? I'm like a little kid on Christmas. I think this is so needed, but I also think it shows the quality of Canada because we've been left out of the She Believes Cup numerous years. And now you look at the She Believes Cup and the quality of teams that are going to that, and it's no disrespect, but this tournament, you look at England, you look at Germany, you look at Spain, top teams and top domestic leagues around the world. So this is going to be a huge test for Canada. I love that you touched on that, Laura, because it is going to be a really big test for them. Obviously, big players out, but it's such a huge opportunity for players to step up in big moments. And yes, they're in their off season, they're going through preseason, but it's going to be such a quality tournament. And the more that you can have games like this, and again, I hate to be disrespectful to maybe not top teams in the world, but this sets you up for huge success moving forward. This sets you up for that experience, grinding out results against top teams. You look at the success that we've had at the Olympic Games. We haven't had that success at a World Cup because we didn't have the quality of teams leading up to it. And now you're playing the Englands, the Germanys, the Spains. Spain's completely refurbished their team because of their such successful domestic lead. And then you look at Germany, it's just a powerhouse. Obviously, weren't at the Olympic Games because their qualification tournament is actually the World Cup, which is insane to even think about. So I'm absolutely buzzing for this. It's going to be a good test. And I don't think results are really going to matter. I think it's going to be individual performances and just getting those top minutes in for these players.
Kaylin, you said something there that was, really important, and it kind of just makes you go, yeah, that's right. Canada didn't get invited to a lot of tournaments in the past.
Am I bitter? Yes.
I mean, that's the thing. If you're new to the game, because the Canadian women have had so much success, really a lot of people, I would say, started to pay attention right in 2012 with that Olympic bronze medalist. But you forget all the years before and like how tough it was, the struggles and everything there. So, Amy, how have you seen this program grow, where it almost seems like it's a given now that if there's an invitational tournament, Canada is going to get the invite?
Well, I think that's where Canada really establishes itself as one of these top tier elite teams. So before, they would maybe be flashes of brilliance, or you would see a roster or kind of ideology come together and it work out on the pitch. But it's been so consistent now, 3 podiums in a row, 2 bronze medals. They're the defending gold medalists. So you heard Sinclair talk about they want to sort of test the waters and, you're on top of the mountain and see how the wind feels up there. And I'm excited to see what Priestman does with this roster. Kerr checks in as a goalkeeper. We've got Wojciech as a forward. And Alidu, a girl from right around where I live, just outside Montreal, who's never seen a senior, any experience actually with the youth national teams or the senior team. So see how they work into the mix. Kerr, who's a number 2 at the Washington Spirit, not really getting much playing time. So maybe Priestman gives her a look in these games coming up against really strong teams, as Kaylin and Laura spoke about. So I think Canada now has established itself. It's recognized around the world as being a true elite team. And I think now they need to go out and they need to maybe see what Priestman does with the lineups and the tactics. I mean, and with less success in Mexico and playing kind of that back 3. So looking forward to how she utilizes the players on her roster and hopefully get some success out on the field.
Canadians have definitely been turning heads, so that means they're getting attention from different leagues around the world. And Kaylin, now we see Julia Grosso, who, by the way, got the winning penalty kick in that gold medal game at the Olympics. Now she's playing for Juventus. We're definitely going to touch on the Canadian women playing in the French league and the English league as well. But when Julia Grosso came up big at the Olympics, again, a relatively unknown, and then gets signed by Juventus, what was your reaction to that?
Absolutely love it, because I've loved her since day one. The first time I was ever in broadcasting, it was at the Canadian tournament, I think in Winnipeg, or I forget what it's actually called. I was with TSN and I remember I saw her in the midfield and I was like, who is this girl? I remember I texted Carmelina Moscato and I was like, please tell me this girl is on your radar, because she is outstanding. She's very different. She's almost a mix of a Diana Matheson, and then she's got that flair, but then she's got the grit of a Desiree Scott. So she is something that I've never seen in a midfield quality that Canada has. I mean, she's a box-to-box midfielder. She dances with the ball at her feet. She's smooth. She's silky. And now she can step up in big moments. We saw that at the Olympic Games, obviously putting that penalty away. That makes you such a good player, because confidence oozing out. I love that she decided to side for Juve, because she could have gone to the NWSL and tried to work her way in. And that's been a very difficult thing for Canadians, going to the NWSL and getting into those starting 11s, because obviously the Americans, it wasn't very much an American league. I would say for the first 5 or 6 years, you're starting to see that turn a little bit. So I love it. It's a big step to go over to Europe, get out of your comfort zone and step up for a team where the language is different, the culture is different, the food is different. I mean, I'm not complaining about the food. I would move back there tomorrow because I did live in Rome and I never wanted to move home. But I just think this is such a good stepping stone in her career, and she is going to be the future of Canada soccer in that midfield.
When were you in Rome?
We went, remember when we were training, or what was it? I don't want to talk about the World Cup. It was the Germany World Cup 2011, but we were there because Carolina Marachi was our head coach.
Yeah.
So we lived there. And I mean, I loved it because obviously everyone knows I love wine and food. So I was right in my comfort zone.
It's show one. But I don't, if we can just finesse the producer, we might be able to have, wine.
I'm behaving myself today, so.
Yeah. Okay, so Julia Grosso obviously is just one player of so many who are applying their craft overseas. And I know, Laura, you and I spoke about this before, about Jessie Fleming. And so she plays for Chelsea. She's really earned her way into a starting role or playing consistently with that team. With Chelsea, for the first time ever on the women's side, they win the domestic treble. They get the Super League title, the League Cup, and then they win the FA Cup. She played that entire game, and I think it was in front of over 40,000 people. And if you kind of want to come full circle, they played that game on the very day that 100 years earlier, women had been banned from playing soccer because it was unbecoming, right? And that was a ban that lasted for 50 years. So, right? So really nice to kind of get that win and do something special on that day. But I also said to you, I said, is this an example, Laura, of a Canadian going overseas with that type of success? And we'll get to more examples of it, of just like sticking with that grind to become that consistent player and the success that can come with it?
Well, first of all, you just gave me goosebumps. Like, so that was very nice. That was a nice stat I didn't know. Yeah, I think Jessie is actually a great example for Julia, right? Like, they both came out of NCAA play. They both played college football, and there's going to be a different level and there's going to be a jump, right? And Jessie Fleming, I think, is the kind of player that, like Kaylin just said about Julia Grosso, you say, Jessie is part of the future of the Canadian midfield, just like Julia. It doesn't mean that going from UCLA to Chelsea was like this immediate jump where she's like, cool, I'm a starter. Like, I'm going to boss this midfield in this FAWSL. And I think that Julia can learn a little bit from that and understand that, you know, there is a difference in level. And it's going to take a little bit of work, especially with these players who are so young. Like Julia Grosso and Jessie Fleming feel like they have been around forever, but they're in their early 20s. Like, it's insane how young they are.
You're aging us, and that makes me feel terrible about myself.
It's not good for anybody to go back and look up their age. But I think it's great for Jessie. It's great to see. I don't think anybody's necessarily surprised by what she's doing right now because she's always had the quality, but she definitely had to put in the work, and she has. And it's really cool to see that come to fruition. Like, at this point, is she already the most successful Canadian ever in the FAWSL? I would assume probably.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So
yeah. I mean, those are great credentials, but if we move on over to the Women's French League, I mean, how do you not talk, Amy, about Khadijah Buchanan and what she's been able to accomplish with Lyon, from winning league titles to winning 4 straight Champions League titles as well with Lyon? What do you make of a defender like that? Who, I mean, I know she's quiet. She's coming out of her shell a little bit. A couple of the tournaments we've seen her in, she's getting a little bit more animated now with the press and talking, which I absolutely love. It's taken a while to see that side of her. But Amy, she does a lot of talking on the pitch with her skill.
She really does. And she reminds me a lot in her leadership quality and style of a Christine Sinclair. There's never going to be another Christine Sinclair, but she quietly leads in a very similar way. And I think when we look at the roster to sort of check back to the Arnold Clark Cup, they're a little bit thin in the center back position. And so Khadijah Buchanan and Shelina Zadorsky, who's in season, versus a Vanessa Gilles going to Angel City FC is out of season. Bev Priestman's going to be heavily reliant on these in-season players. And so Khadijah Buchanan, I mean, Laura, you're talking about how youthful Fleming and Grosso are, and Buchanan's, you know, nary a few years older than they are, but yet still so young herself. So she's accomplished so much in, you know, the years that she's been with the national team. I remember splashing onto the scene at the Women's World Cup in 2015, I think making the best 11 of that tournament, or at least of the young players. And she's only sort of vaulted herself into the elite sort of stratosphere of women's football. And so she's going to continue to lead from that position, and is somebody that I see potentially wearing the armband in the future.
If you're going to say nary a few years, and you have to give us a heads up so we can brush up on our old English. So we can join you in that type of conversation.
For ye old English courses, let me know.
that one went straight over my head. I just continued to smile, being like, I have no idea what that is.
I go sit by the hearth with our ale and discuss football.
Yeah, that would behoove you to have a drink close by.
Okay, you're rolling. You like that. Okay, the old Jordyn Huitema, I want to ask your opinion on this, Kaylin, because this is somebody as well who hasn't seen, she's really, again, having to work hard to get into, you know, the PSG starting lineup. The story there, of course, is, you know, she wasn't even playing with PSG. They didn't release her for that She Believes Cup. We know she was upset about that. And because of not getting a lot of playing time, you can make the argument that Bev Priestman didn't see a lot from her. She wasn't even originally chosen to go to the Olympics. COVID protocols allowed them to expand the roster, so she does end up going to the games, and great for her. But I mean, she has a hat trick already in the Champions League tournament. Have you seen her turn a corner?
I think for me, I was, again, I'm always very vocal. Everyone knows this. I'm very opinionated. And I was so hard on Bev. I had to put an apology out after the tournament because I thought she managed to do brilliantly. Yes. But I was so enraged that a player like Jordyn Huitema was left off, because she's going to be the next Christine Sinclair. Now, in a different way. I think she's marketable. She's got the social media behind her. So now obviously you look at something like an Alex Morgan. I'm going to compare it to Alex Morgan. If she can continue to put the ball into the back of the net, continue to grow in confidence, she is going to lead this team both on and off the pitch, because she's going to have that voice that some other players don't because of her social media following. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but that's the way our world's going. You look at the U.S. women's national team and you look at the NWSL, the players that were the most vocal have the biggest followings, and people listen. That gets heatwave, that gets those likes, that gets those headlines with big news outlets, and people start focusing on it. So I think Jordyn Huitema is going to play a very different role with this Canadian side than Christine Sinclair ever did. But I love that she stuck it out at PSG. She could have taken the easy way out, transferred to a different club where she would have got the starting got into the starting 11, got those 90-minute performances, and she's continued to grind it out. Was she happy? No. But this shows me a lot about a player's personality and the fight that she has. And it is such a Canadian quality that you can't instill in players. You have to learn this and grow with it. And I think she's done absolutely phenomenal. And getting her opportunities, excuse me, obviously I'm really passionate about Jordyn Huitema, getting her opportunities with PSG. She has showed me that she can take that step to be the next Christine Sinclair. Very different. I know you can't remake Christine Sinclair, but I think Jordyn Huitema has the qualities to be that big striker. I like her centrally. I don't like her out on the wing. So I think obviously once you see maybe Christine Sinclair retire or maybe start to come off the bench and finish games, that is Jordyn Huitema's biggest success. Center of the park, that big striker that can get behind in those area battles.
Yeah, she's a tall girl too. And I do love how every time I ask a question, you were ready to pounce on me.
Sorry. Am I very much passionate about this Canadian side? Yes.
This is so good. So yeah, fantastic with Jordyn Huitema. And it's wonderful. And I say this with both national teams, because we can talk about every single player because of the depth and how everyone steps up. And it's definitely the same thing on the women's side. But it's crazy, Laura, that we haven't talked about the player deemed to be the best Canadian player for the last few years. That's Ashley Lawrence. She too plays on PSG, winning that title. She is a regular on that team. I mean, we're talking steady Eddie on the pitch as well during that Olympic gold medal run. But I don't know why. I mean, is it our fault? Like, maybe I should just point the finger at myself. Why is she not getting that? Like, why are we not talking about her as much as we're talking about everyone else?
Yeah, we should be better. We're not.
Laura, don't throw us all under the bus.
I think that there's a few reasons for this. I think that Ashley Lawrence has been consistently good for so long, not just at the national level, but in France. Like, she's one of the best players in the French league. She's not just one of the best players on, well, I mean, when you're one of the best players on PSG, you're one of the best players in the French league. But she's not flashy, though. And that's the thing. Like, if you think back to 2021, a lot of players did a lot of flashy things. I mean, Stephanie Levay stopped 5 of 12 penalties, and Jessie Fleming scored all the penalties, and Julia Grosso did the last kick of the game, and Christine Sinclair remains Christine Sinclair. So when you're talking, particularly, I find like at the end of your voting, Ashley Lawrence got a couple of nods. She was up for BBC World Player of the Year. But I really think that because she's just so consistently good, she gets overlooked. And I think that you could say that about Kadisha Buchanan to a point too, but I think that because she plays a center back role, and center back is not necessarily, as Amy mentioned, an area of real depth for the Canadian squad, I think you pay more attention to it. And when Kadisha Buchanan is not in the lineup, you start to panic a little bit. But Ashley Lawrence, is the name. If I'm Bev Priestman, it's the first one to go on the team sheet. There's no question about it. So I definitely think that, she's generally sort of similar to Kadisha. She's pretty quiet. She's really, really well spoken. But I don't think that she's the one who's necessarily going to be all over the place in terms of social media and all of those things that people pay attention to outside of the game right now. So Canadians are very lucky to have her. I feel like we should be giving her flowers more. And hopefully this is an opportunity to do it. But I mean, you can only think that this Canadian team is going to be better because of Ashley Lawrence. And I also think that maybe something that we don't see is I think she's probably played a big role in Jordyn Huitema's development. I mean, having that person to sort of help a player transition and knowing very well, I think is a really important role. I think Ashley Lawrence is a leader on this team. And I think that's going to be huge because going back to Kaylin and Jordyn Huitema, for me, the way that this Canadian national team progresses in the future, comes a lot down to Jordyn Huitema. Not exclusively, but I mean, they've had trouble scoring. They want to get better on set pieces. Hello, Jordyn Huitema. Like, where is she, right? And what can she do?
Can't believe this show is absolutely flying by. There's so many things that I want to get to. But I do want to put a bow on this national team talk. And Amy, I just wonder, the Canadian women, again, you go back to 2012, Olympic bronze in 2016, and then culminating in this gold in the 2020 Tokyo Games. We know that they really got this program started, influenced the men. They've talked about it. Now you have the men doing incredible things where, I mean, it's really a formality at this point now to go to the World Cup for the first time since 1986. How do you think these programs help each other with the success they're having?
I could talk about this for more than one show, but I think so, you know, the success that the men are having is a long time coming. John Herdman is a big part of it. Like what he did even just this last window with managing his roster and in season, out of season players, COVID issues, injuries, all this sort of stuff, but like dating back to when they first started. He's just done a phenomenal job, and he came from the women's program, had success there, and was able to leap to the men's game. But let's be honest, if they haven't gone to a World Cup since 1986, they've essentially been riding the women's coattails internationally, right? So the women are paving the way, and now the men have this notoriety. It's a fabulous story, not just in CONCACAF, but worldwide. People are talking about this men's team. But I think what you need to be doing is having the conversation. It can't be just one or the other. It becomes Canada now in the footballing elite. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about funding and we talk about investment and we talk about visibility, now it has to be the women on par with the men. It can't be one or the other. So, you know, we're still without a domestic league for the women. There's no professional league here in Canada. And like, how long can this be tenable to talk about this team remaining in the elite? Mm-hmm. And so for me, if you continue to outsource your talent, it's only a matter of time before you're no longer in the conversation of the elite. You no longer are bringing home 3 consecutive podiums. So I think to cycle back to the men, we can be proud of what they're doing because it's such a great story. And it really does bode well for continuing to foster the development of grassroots soccer and both national teams, men's and women's. But I think you have to look at where those funds are going to be allocated when you talk about the disparity and the built-in inequality in terms of the development. It needs to now be an equitable investment in the sport so that they can move forward and continue to be elite programs.
Yeah, Kaylin, I want you to have a word on that.
How do I follow up with that? How do I follow up after Amy? She's nailed absolutely every single thing to every single detail. I think you look at this men's national team program. I've been very lucky to be able to call some of their games, be pitch side with them, and what they're doing, not on the pitch, but off the pitch. They've completely changed the dynamic of men's football. But again, that starts with the women's side doing that first. Now you look at our country. Tickets are selling out within 30 minutes. People are selling their tickets for $2,500 just to get to a game. That is very much an NHL mindset in the playoffs, trying to get tickets to games there. So I think what we've done, we've put both now the women and men's side on the map. And when teams look at playing, whether it's the men, whether it's the women, they're like, oh, beep. Like, this is going to be a game. It's not just going to be a fight. Tactically, very difficult to break down both these sides. Technically, very skilled and developed. Whereas before we were in the nitty gritty, get stuck in, long balls over the top. And I remember being in the midfield when I first started with the national team, and like the amount of pain I had in my neck because the ball never came to me. It was like our center backs would knock it long to Christine Sinclair and be like, best of luck. And I'd be like, what am I on the pitch for? So I think now you look at us as a footballing nation and a footballing country, and that excites me. You look at the men undefeated in the Hex. That's unheard of. 9 points last window in the most difficult window they could have had. Amy, you touched on it. Players being out of season, players without the best player in CONCACAF with Alphonso Davies. So I think this tournament now for the women's side, obviously the men are doing really well. You look at some of the players, Adriana Leon, Christine Sinclair. So it's a tournament for them, for players to step up like we've just seen with the men's program. And I like that Bev said, this is a new starting point for us. This is now we have to redevelop and recreate Canada as a women's program. And that shows me that we're not just okay with 2 bronze and an Olympic gold. We want a podium at a World Cup, and we want to be on every single podium in every nation wanting to hate to play us.
Yeah, no, and I mean, Bev, and you have to love it as well. As a former player, as a fan, as people who cover the game, she's not even thinking anymore about the Olympics. I mean, that's still something that's so wonderful. But at the end of the day, this is a World Cup qualifying year for the women. They have a job ahead of them. And we have just blown through this show.
I'm still thinking about the 2012 bronze medal. Like, I still live in the past. Like, never won a gold medal.
Where's the medal?
I think it's in, like, I have like a little cabinet here. I think it's in there, but it's like, it's been through the ringer. I celebrated a little bit too heavy with it, but I'm okay with it. I'm grown up now.
Next year I want to see that medal. But I always love asking Olympians where they put the medal, because some of the times, like, it's the most random. Some of them have it in their bank, like, in a little box in the bank, and it's protected. Yeah. Some people are like, I think it's in my sock drawer.
It was in my sock drawer for ages, and then we moved to this home, and I've like I don't even. Yeah, it's over there.
I love it. I do want to see. All right, so this is fantastic stuff. But there's so much we're going to also leave for next week. Again, if you're just tuning in or checking us out for the first time, OneSoccer.ca, we're going to be talking about the women's game. So we're going to talk NWSL, the new CBA. I'm going to tease you because next Tuesday we're going to be back again. We're going to be putting out content here, so we're going to talk Trinity Rodman and that landmark deal. But finally, I just want one more question before we go here, since we're sticking with the national team. Steph LeBay was a sensation across this country. She was shortlisted, right, for FIFA Goalkeeper of the Year. Chile's Christiane Endler, who plays for PSG, or I guess won it with PSG, and now she plays for Lyon. Ooh, the drama. She ends up winning, conceded 4 goals all season. I get all this, Amy, and I know her stats are phenomenal, but I guess the bigger question to me was, A, how much stock do the voters put into the Olympics? And or is it more of kind of like they just don't think about Canada? I don't know. Does Canada still need to earn their place there in Europe?
I think it's those two things. It's definitely two-pronged. It's Canada not getting the deserved respect, because you look at the FIFA Best. They made up an award for Sinky so that they would be on the right side of history when she finally decides to retire. I hope that never happens, but it's coming, right? So it basically a made-up award because she hasn't figured in Ballon d'Or shortlists. She hasn't been on a FIFA Best 11 side, which is insane to me. So it's that as well, but it's also touching back to what I was mentioning before in the disparity between either the prize money for FIFA for the women's and men's games, or just the inequality across the map between the two. When you think about gosh, what was I talking about?
It's okay. I get heated when it comes to this as well.
You were so angry.
So visibility. Yeah. I came back to it. I got it. Sorry, Kaylin. So two-pronged. I forgot the second prong. I'm back with it. So the visibility.
Amy, are you sure you don't have wine in your cup?
Wine.
It might be. Yeah. Nary a drop left. So the visibility of the North American game, whether it's the NWSL, and we're talking about Labe, who was with PSG, but before that she was in Scandinavia. So is Canada given the deserved respect? Probably not. But I also think it's the visibility of this Canadian team, and maybe they're thinking that despite his 3 podiums in a row, that they're not given the respect that they deserve, even after winning gold at the Olympics.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I do wonder, I don't know what you think, Laura, maybe Kaylin, jump in on this quickly too, as you have a couple minutes here. I don't know. I mean, do you think Steph would have retired if there was a domestic league here to kind of come back with that? You just mentioned she was with PSG. I mean, I don't know if she already had it in her head that she was going to retire, but maybe if there was a domestic league in Canada, she would have played. I don't know, Laura, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think it's totally possible. I also think that when there's a supporters group that is made for this eventual women's league, Steph can run it. I have a feeling that she could just bring the beers and make it go. I've seen her watching curling, and I feel like she could be the head of the section. But yeah, I don't have time for this argument about this European thing either, because look at her stats at club level. They were out of control. I mean, I feel like you could just say 5 of 12 penalties and you win the award, but quite honestly, her club level stuff was incredible too. So, I mean, I think a domestic league is incredibly important. I think that you could ask any of these players, Diana Matheson, Christine Sinclair, would she come back from Portland, to Khadijah Buchanan and Ashley Lawrence in Brampton. Imagine. Like, it would be incredible. So, yeah, I don't know. Steph won in everyone's hearts, but it would have been really nice to see her name on a sheet of paper.
And I'm pleading the fifth because every time I'm just going to plead the fifth on this one because I don't want to get in trouble. All right. I've already been in a heated debate yesterday. I just don't have it in me today. Today's like a Trend Kilo day for me, but Steph should have won it. I will leave it at that. Again, very vocal on social media when she didn't win it. I'll leave it at that.
Love it. I love the energy. I love everything. I love the three of us will be with you every week. Andy, Laura, Kaylin. Amy was our special guest today. Hall of Famer, Canada Soccer Hall of Fame. So great having you. And hopefully we will bug you once again to come on and join us as we will continue every week to talk about the women's game here on OneSoccer.ca. Till then, peace.